Hello, I'm Liv and I've come to Nottingham Playhouse this evening to see The Madness of King George III. Come on with me. The Madness of George III, written by Alan Bennett and starring Mark Gatiss, charts the mental decline of the titular king and the inability of his court to deal with his condition.
It's a brilliant play. I did George III and his ministers for A-level, and a bit like Alan and his introduction to the play, because it's a notoriously dull period, but I remember being so thrilled about the illness. I mean, in those long summary history lesson afternoons, it was like, oh, he goes mad, marvelous. But then, and I remember lots of the ins and outs of Fox and Pitt and those rival ministries and all that. But it's the human story, isn't it? I think that appeals, and I think it's a very, if you can say such a thing, it's a natural subject for Alan to have lighted on. I think because of his great interest in history, but also in the frailties of human beings, you know, and also his attraction to royalty. You know, I think it's got a lot of his touchstones in it, hasn't it? And I think the sort of face behind the royal mask is something he's always been very interested in, as have I think. And I played Charles I and I've played George IV. I'm working my way around all the kings and some of the queens possibly. But principally it's because I think it is a modern classic. I think it's a terrific play. I'm a huge fan of Alan and I wanted to work with you again. So it's the complete package.
George III's reign was fatally disrupted by his own mental illness. His character and behaviour lampooned publicly by cartoonists of the day, many of whom he paid off to cease ridiculing him.
There's a reason why we are always drawn to these stories, particularly about warring factions. And what I find very interesting is that the struggle for the crown has actually passed into politics, but it is essentially exactly the same story. And that's why we're drawn to political dramas. That means that the royal family have assumed a different role now, I think, which is kind of soap opera. And so we're drawn to the old soap operas and also to the ongoing one. And the reason the Americans love the royal family so much is because they miss having one. And the reason they anoint families like the Kennedys as their own, there's a sort of need for them, I think, within the public, both to build them up and knock them down, inevitably. So any royal story which has all those things going for it is immediately attractive. But I think it's also, there is a sort of very British thing and a very Bennett-esque thing of the sort of happy sadness of it, the bittersweetness of it, which I'm always very drawn to. But the public face of the monarch, the lovely happy marriage of George and Charlotte, and then the rivalries of the different political camps and the hatred of the son, and just as George I hated his son, and there are these fascinating threads to pull out, I think. Particularly, actually, I think with the Prince of Wales waiting all his life, you know, that is not uncommon. Edward VII had it with Victoria, and Charles has it with Elizabeth, and you can see the same things resonating through history, which I think is very interesting.
Well, that was absolutely incredible. The play is a deep dive into the mental illness of a monarch that became a constitutional crisis. Mark Gatiss gives an amazingly powerful performance along with the rest of his very, very talented cast. And the play finishes on a high note with him returning triumphantly to power. However, the historical reality was somewhat different. The king relapsed back into his illness and his eldest son became Prince Regent. I can highly recommend this play. It's on Nottingham Playhouse until the 24th of November, or you can see it broadcast live as part of NT Live on Tuesday, the 20th of November.